Thank you for joining us online here at Fam Church as we continue our series HomeFront. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button below to subscribe to this YouTube channel, or go out to Facebook at facebook.com/famchurch and give us a like. And now, our lead pastor, Brian Lane.
And so today we're on part 3 of our series called Homefront. And I also believe that with this whole series, that even if you're not a Christian, even if you're not a follower of Jesus, if you listen to what we say and listen to some of the things that we're talking about in here, they are going to help you in your life. And the big idea, the purpose behind this series is we are trying to help people, give them all the tools that they need to operate in one of the most important areas of their life, and that's in personal relationships. Most aspects of our life come down to our ability to work and operate within the structure of personal relationships, and so we're trying to help you out so that you can properly function in those rather than making life harder for yourself with that. And last week we went to the front lines of our relationships, and what I mean by the front lines is we talked about the two people on the front lines in any relationship. Last week we talked about men, and I've got to say I was kind of blown away by the response to that message last week. I have had more people come to me and say about the impact the message had on them, and it was quite surprising because I wasn't that impressed with the message when I put it together. And so it just shows that how God works and moves in things that you put together. But last week we talked about men, and because most of the problems in our relationships have to do with the two people involved in the relationship. It's because we're different. Men and women, we are different. We have different expectations. We have different character flaws that we bring into a relationship that affect how we relate to each other, that affect how we talk to each other, how we resolve problems, and how we take care of issues. And so here we go this morning. We are going to look at women, but I want to just talk about just review quickly what we talked about with men, because it's going to have some impact on our thing with women. And if you missed last week's message, you can go to Fam Church's Facebook page, go down through the timeline, find Homefront 2 Men, and click on it and watch it. It's not on our web page yet because we're in the process of putting up a new web page. Our new web page should be up this week, and when that web page is up, the messages will be on our web page. As of right now, they are not out there. And so last week, talking about men, and we looked at the story of creation in the book of Genesis, and we saw that man was created by God, and God put man on this earth to rule and reign over the creation. He put Adam here as the caretaker of his creation. There was expectations and there was responsibilities that were laid upon Adam as he was created and he was placed here on this earth. And what happened is he got these responsibilities, he got these expectations, and at some point he dropped the ball when it came to fulfilling what he was supposed to do. See, he was given this mandate to protect this whole creation, including Eve, and at some point in time he was not able to protect Eve, and Eve fell to the trap of the serpent and caused all of creation to fall because of it. And because Adam had fallen short, because he had missed out on what God had called him to do, what God had called him to be as the protector, as the caretaker, it just freaked him out. He got scared and he ran and he hid. He got exposed as somebody that couldn't do his job. The primary job he had as a man, he completely failed at. And when he failed, he ran and hid because he'd been exposed. And just like Adam, that's how many men are today. They're fearful that they're going to be exposed as a fraud when it comes to manhood, and so they hide. And so much of what a man does, so much of who he is in his life is rooted in this fear of being exposed. But in seeing all of that, we also saw that God had given us a solution to that, men. God had given us a solution to this problem. And the first thing was, in order to break that feeling, in order to break that hold, in order to break that bondage that we have to the fear of not measuring up to what we're called to be, he gave us Jesus first and foremost. And we saw a section of the New Testament where it says that God, made man in his image and likeness. We no longer have to live in the fear of that failure of the past, but if we give our lives to Jesus, he can come in, he can break that fear, and he can give us new life and redeem us and repair us from the scar left from the failure in the garden. And then the second part of the solution that we looked at was that just as Jesus had an adventure in his life, God's got an adventure for each man to go on. See, God wants each man to jump into his mission. He's given a mission. He's given a mission to go out and to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. He has given this mission, and he's calling each and every single man to redeem what is left of his time, to go out and fulfill this mission. And this mission is going to be a huge adventure. It's much more than coming to church and reading your Bible and praying. It's about getting out there and living your life so radically and so powerfully for Jesus that everybody just looks at you and goes, holy cow. Look at the life that they are living. That's the life that Jesus is calling. And as we do that, men, as we live our life, as we give ourselves to Jesus, and as we radically live out his mission, the pain, the hurt, the scars, the stuff left over from the fall in the garden is not going to be there anymore, because we're going to be living the way God intended us to live from the beginning. And that was last week. And so today we move on to the next segment, and women, and I think that opening video sums up how most men feel about women. You can never figure them out. 1 minute, everything is going incredible and amazing, and it's the most wonderful experience, and then seconds later, you're down, you're depressed, you're angry, you're upset, something is wrong. I mean, Flynn Rider, the guy in the cartoon there, he was sitting there going, what on earth is this girl's problem? She's just all over the place. Rapunzel, violent mood swings. I mean, that's the best way you could describe her. But I think that every guy in this room, and maybe even women in this room, in your relationships, in your interaction with other women, you have experienced something like this. You've gotten done with a conversation. You've gotten done with an interaction, and you've said to yourself, what on earth was that? I mean, have you been there? Anybody been there? All right. It's happened to me on many occasions. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I was dating this girl named Ida. Now, that wasn't her real name, that was her nickname, and for the life of me, I can't remember what her real name even was. That's all I got in my head is Ida. She was called that because she had long legs, and so people said she had legs like a spider, so they called her Ida. I don't know. Anyways, I got all that information, but I can't remember the girl's name for anything, okay? But here's the deal. We were in this relationship. It had been going on for about 2 weeks, and one night we were hanging out, and she decides that she wants to ask me a question. She's got a deep question to ask me. And guys, if you ever get asked this question by a girl, I'm telling you right now, it's a trap. Stay away from it, okay? Just stay away from this question. Because I feel like no matter what answer I gave in this situation, it was probably going to be wrong. But this is what she said to me. She goes, okay, so let's say that in the middle of the night, I just called up my job. I said I quit my job. I packed up my apartment into my car, and I took off out of here, left town, no trace, no record. You had no idea where I went to. What would you do? Now, you got to remember, this question was asked in the days before cell phones, where everybody kept the same phone number no matter where they lived in the country. Okay, this was in the days before Facebook, before internet, before email, before Instagram, before Snapchat, before any of these things that we know where people are at all the time on any given moment. I mean, there's a new app on the iPhone that's like you can, if your friends send you a request, you can know where they're at any given time in this world. I'm like, what is that? Who wants that? I don't want people to know where I am at every second. Anyways, Ashley sent me a request on that, and I denied it. I'm not going to lie. I denied my own daughter's request for that. But we didn't have this stuff, okay? And so I'm thinking to myself, how would I find her? I have no idea how I'm going to do that. And so I said, well, we've been dating 2 weeks, and so if you disappear in the middle of the night, I guess I just move on with my life. That was the wrong answer, okay? The correct answer was I was going to quit my job and search the country until I found her. That's never going to happen, okay? That would never have happened. But because I failed the test, the relationship was over, and still to this day, when I think about this whole conversation, I scratch my head and go, what? That doesn't even make sense. And now some of you women may be sitting in here, I completely understand why she asked you that question, okay? But I just don't get it. And so what I want to do is I want to try and explain how we've gotten to where we've gotten with women, the types of issues that exist, because I know that every man who's been in a relationship with a woman wants to know why. They will ask questions like the one I was asked. Why they will put you in places and situations and circumstances where there seems to be no place for you to win. And so we are going to look back into the book of Genesis again. In the creation account. And if you brought a Bible with you this morning, Genesis is the first book in the Bible, and I invite you to turn there. If you have problems finding it or didn't bring a Bible with you today, we're going to have it on the screen behind me for you to follow along. And even more exciting, if you don't have a Bible at all, we now have brand new, fresh, crisp Bibles at guest services. And so if you need a Bible, stop by our Fam Connection Center on your way out the door, and they can hand you a brand new Bible so that there's not a reason for you not having one. But just a brief bit of background on this. I know I covered this last week, and so I don't want to say too much, but tradition tells us that Genesis, once again, was written by Moses during the time he ruled the Hebrew people after their deliverance from slavery in Egypt, all right? The Israelites spent 40 years wandering through the desert, and during that time, Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, okay? And there's no way to prove that Moses wrote these, okay? I can't go out. We don't have the original documents. We don't have something that says Moses definitely wrote those. But what we do know about Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy is that every time they make a historical point, every time they say something historical, there has never been a time where archaeology has proven their historical information in those books wrong. Okay, and so that's all I want to say about that. And I know we're going to talk about the creation account, and some people may disagree with what the Bible says in regards to creation. I'm okay with that. You can disagree with me on that, but that's where we are going to talk about our text this morning. And the place we're going to start this morning is in Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to go to verses 21 through 25. And this is what it says in Genesis 2, 21 through 25. It says, "So the Lord caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, 'This is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man.' This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame." How many of you are saying, "I wish we could be naked and feel no shame"? Anyone? No. Okay. But so here's what's happening here. This is what's going on. And so God, he needed to create a helpmate for Eve. Eve needed a helpmate. And so God says, you know what? Well, there's none suitable amongst the animal kingdom, and so I'm going to make one for you. So he put Adam into a deep sleep. And we talked about this last week, but the text says they took a rib, but it's more likely God took more than just a rib. It was quite possibly his whole side. But he took it, and then God took that piece of Adam and formed this another person, woman, with the parts, the part that he took out of Adam, and then the dirt of the ground. And so here's what I want you to see in this first part of the text. Okay, so God created the woman. Who was Eve in relationship with first in this whole scenario? She was in relationship with God first. Because where was Adam? Adam was asleep, correct. And so Adam is there sleeping, and so God creates Eve, and then he brings her to life. And then God wanted to make sure that he had the opportunity to know who Eve was first, so that Eve would look to him, so that Eve would look to God and say, you know what, God, you are my creator, you are my sustainer, you are my source, you are my hope for life. Because what would happen is if she would have woken up and Adam would have been the first person that she would have connected with in relationship, she probably would have decided that Adam was her source, her creator, her source of life, her source of everything. And so God, in order to make sure that she had a proper perspective on things and who God was, created her and then left Adam asleep and brought her to life and connected with her in relationship before he introduced her to Adam. And so that's what's going on here. But as we move into chapter 3, we see that once again there is something in Eve that blows up the plan that God had for his creation. And that something is exposed and exploited by the serpent. And so I want to look at the events of the fall again this morning. And so that means we're going to read Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. And this is what it says there. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." "You will certainly not die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. All right, so we got this event. This serpent slithers on up and starts talking to Eve. Okay, the first problem there, the serpent is talking to Eve. Ladies, you're out doing your gardening. A snake slithers up, starts talking to you. What are you going to do? You're going to run, you're going to scream, you're going to beat the snake with the rake in your hand. You're not going to sit there and have a conversation with the snake, okay? I don't know what on earth Eve was thinking, but she has a conversation with this thing. And the words that he uses, the things that he speaks, were words designed to drive a wedge between God and Eve. He was trying to break the bond that Eve had with God. He was trying to get her to question the bond that she had with God. He was trying to draw out of her some insecurities that she had in her life. He told her that all of the things that God had told her, all of the things that God had given her, all of the things that God had promised her were not true, were not right, were junk, and were garbage. The snake basically said, God didn't have your best interests at heart, Eve. And it shook Eve. She began to question. She began to question God's motives and God's reasoning and why he was leaving this person that she was first in relationship with, this person that she thought was supposed to love her and care for her and protect her and be her source of life, was the one who was telling her a story. And now here she is standing here with the serpent going, this jerk is holding out on me. And she's really frustrated. And with those words, this character flaw came to the surface. This character flaw was insecurity. Because suddenly what Eve had wasn't good enough anymore. Suddenly Eve wasn't complete anymore. See, now for Eve to be complete, she needed what the serpent had. She needed the fruit. God was no longer enough. Adam was no longer enough. The only thing that was going to make her feel secure about who she was that fruit. And I think for most women today, and I cleared all of this past my wife before I spoke it, but one of the struggles is insecurity. The fruit that you're trying to eat from may be different, but there's a constant search for the thing that will make you complete, and it fuels the things that you do, the decisions that you make, and many of the problems that you have in relationships. And one of the areas that I think women really struggle with insecurity in comes with is with appearance, with beauty, with being attractive, because we live in a society that judges women by their beauty. We live in a society that judges women by how attractive they are. Certain jobs are given to certain people based upon how they look. Certain things are given to certain people because of how they look, because of their attractiveness, because of their weight, because of their size, because of their hair, because of all sorts of different things. Women get jobs and lose jobs all the time because of how they look. People treat women differently because of how they look. Women, because of how you look, it can determine much more than how much money you make, how many friends you have. It can determine many other things in your life. And see, this is why there's been an explosion in this society with plastic surgery. And the majority of the people going to get plastic surgery are women. We had a girl in one of our youth ministries who was 16. Okay, she didn't think her breasts were big enough. And so for her 16th birthday, she asked her mom for a boob job. Guess what? The mom gave her a boob job for her 16th birthday because she didn't want her daughter to be insecure and feel like she wasn't pretty and attractive because of the size of her breasts. But that's how it is. See, women will take great steps, spend lots of money, and endure great pain to get a hold of that elusive thing that we call beauty and attractiveness. I mean, I believe if we were to go and take a survey across this country and ask women, if you had the opportunity to change your appearance, to change stuff about your body, about your face, about your hair, we were to ask them, if you had the opportunity to do this and it wasn't going to cost you anything, would you do it? I believe that the majority of women would say, yes, yes, I am. What can you do for me to make me look better? It's one of the fruits that women eat from to feed their insecurity. A second area that women are insecure is with their relationships. They're insecure in their relationships with other women, and they're insecure in their relationships with men. I mean, with women, they're like in a constant competition with them. Who has the nicer clothes? Who has the better looking man? Who has the nicer house? Who has the smartest or best behaved kids? Who makes the most money or has the best job? And I could go on. It's a competition to show the other girls that life is better in your shoes, that you should envy me because I have it more together than you. They want others to be jealous of them. And it seems to have gotten worse the further our society has gotten away from Jesus. Because when I was in high school, girls getting into a fist fight to prove who was the biggest, the baddest, the best in school happened like maybe once every couple of years. Now it's like once a month you've got girls fighting in school to prove who's the biggest, who's the baddest, who's the best, who should be seen as the queen of the school. See, they're insecure in who they are and with their relationships with other women. And so it comes out in these kind of ways in them wanting to fight and prove who they are because they are not secure in who they are. And the same thing happens in women in the relationships with men. Women are insecure in their relationship with men. And so many times they are willing to do things. They're willing to compromise values. They're willing to do things that they normally wouldn't do in order to keep a man around, because having a man around is better than not having any man around. And so they'll do all kinds of crazy things. I mean, I've just heard of girls who've done, like their boyfriend or whoever is like not satisfied with the sex. And so they say, you know what, we need to introduce another girl into this thing so that we can make it a little more lively and a little more exciting. And I know women who say, well, if that's what you want, that's what I'm going to do. And they do it. They're incredibly insecure in their relationship. And then when things break up because they won't give the man what he thinks he needs, they blame themselves because they should have just done what he asked them to do in the first place. And we can trace all of this back to the temptation and the fall. A third way women are insecure with their past is their past. The third way women are insecure is with their past. I've met so many women that have said to me, man, if you just knew about my past, if you just knew about how many bad things I've done, if you just knew about all the crazy things I've been through in my life, you wouldn't even want to sit here and talk to me. I have heard that far more from females than I've ever heard from a guy. But this is what happened with Jesus when he met this woman at the well in the book of John. And I'm going to read a verse from John chapter 4. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to read the whole section. I would challenge you as you go home today to turn to John chapter 4 and make sure what I'm telling you is not crazy stuff. I'm not making up my own story. Make sure what I'm saying is true. But what happened was Jesus was out doing ministry. Him and his disciples are out doing ministry. They're working hard. They get to this town called Sychar, and they decide they need some food. And so the disciples go into town to buy some food, and Jesus sits down on the well waiting for the disciples to come back with his food. And so, while he's sitting there, this woman comes out from the town, okay? And she comes out and she starts messing around at the well, and Jesus says, hey, give me something to drink. And this is the woman's response in John chapter 4, verse 9. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. What she was asking, what she was saying to Jesus was this. She's saying, you don't know who I am, do you? You don't know about my past. You don't know about the problems that I got. You should be ashamed of yourself, Jesus, as a teacher of the religious people, for even spending your time talking to me, because my past is so messed up. My past has so much hurt. My past has so much pain in it that this is someone you don't want to associate with. And that is how I think many women feel about their past. Women will even go as far as thinking that they deserve a man that treats them bad our last insecurity, because of their past. It's a scar that's left behind because of Eve abandoning God for the fruit. Those are the insecurities that women battle with, that I think can be rooted, can be found here in Genesis chapter 3, that are battle with, that bring into relationships problems and complications and issues. But not only did our text in Genesis 3 show the insecurities that came to the surface, the events also brought another wound to the woman's heart. And the wound is the wound that says, I am worth nothing. You may say, well, where did you see that? Well, we talked about it last week. Remember Adam's response? Adam was sitting there. Eve got the fruit. Eve ate the fruit. Adam was supposed to be there to protect her, but Adam did absolutely nothing. And that communicated in very powerful words, Eve, you know what? You're not worth very much. You're not worth enough for me to jump up and protect you from that serpent. He basically stood back and waited to see what was going to happen to Eve, what was going to happen to the serpent, and what was going to happen to the fruits. But those actions just communicated that she had no value to him. And so, men, if you've ever been told it was your fault, well, this time it's true. All right? But that event has left a scar that comes out in women today. So many women look at themselves today and feel that they have no value, that the only purpose that they serve is being a plaything for a man. Their existence is there to work, clean the house, take care of the kids, look good, and have sex. And if they're not able to fulfill those roles, there is no value. And feeling like you have no value just leads you to a life where you just give in to all your insecurities and act like you are nothing. Can I say, ladies, that's not the life that Jesus has for you. That's not how he pictured the life of a woman when he created her. He doesn't want you to live a life run and fueled by the insecurity and the thought that you have no value. You have infinite value in the eyes of the King. So what's the answer to this? How can we, what can we do to change this inside of a woman? Well, just like with the man, the answer starts within the woman. And ladies, you need to realize that even though there was a critical, crucial break in your relationship with God at that crucial time in the Garden of Eden, God does not hold anything about that against you. Those insecurities that came out, God doesn't sit there and go, well, you're too insecure. You've got too many problems. You've got too many issues. I just don't have time for you. I don't have time to deal with it. Jesus instead says this, Ephesians 4:24, and put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. See, when you gave your life to Jesus, you put on a new self. Okay, you became a new person. The old was gone. There was a new person inside of you, and that new person is focused on God. That new person, it wants to be like God in true righteousness and true holiness. There is something inside of you, if you've given your life to Jesus, that is calling out, that is crying out, saying, I am a child of God. I am a child of the King. I am new. I am different. I don't have to live my life being held by these insecurities and all of these things that are telling me I don't have any worth, I don't have any value, I don't have any hope, I am nothing. There's something new inside of you, and what happened in the garden a long time ago no longer has power over us. It no longer has the ability to define you. It no longer has the power to dictate to you how you are to be defined. Jesus is the one who now defines you. Our new self now defines you. You don't have to hold on to the insecurities and the thoughts that you have no value. You are new, you are whole, and you are complete in Jesus. And then the last thing I want to say, and if our worship team could come on back up, I want to read to you from Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16. And this is what I want you to do. I'm going to read this, and ladies, I want you to picture God speaking this to you. It says this, For you created me in my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Ladies, you were knitted together in your mother's womb. God saw your unformed body and wrote down all the days of your life. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Would someone do all of that for a person who had no worth, who had no value, who had no purpose? No. No one would take time to fearfully and wonderfully put someone together if there was no purpose to it. Ladies, your value to Jesus is beyond description. The love he has for you is beyond understanding. He does not look at you and see the person in the garden that didn't think God was good enough. He does not see your fears and insecurities. He does not see your past. When Jesus looks at you, he sees the woman he fearfully and wonderfully knit together in your mother's womb, however many years ago that took place. I know that the serpent lied to you and told you that God didn't care, but I'm here to tell you this morning, God does. God does.
I really hope you enjoyed that message from our series Homefront. If you did, please click the like button below and let us know. And if you have any questions about anything here at Fam Church, you can go out to myfamchurch.com and check us out there. And thank you once again for joining us online at Fam Church.